In this episode, I'll show you how I designed and 3D printed this Hogwarts Express sign for my wife, right here on Filament Friday. Filament Friday is brought to you every week by the generous donations of my Patreon supporters. My family is really into Harry Potter, and my wife is a huge Harry Potter fan. And I had several people send me this Thingiverse file from J. Pohl. It's a Hogwarts Express sign. The difference is he made his sign out of wood and then 3D printed the 9 3/4, and I think he did the letters, although it looks like they're painted here. Well, I wanted to make it smaller, and I wanted it completely 3D printed, so I went to Tinkercad and designed my own. I'm going to use 4 different filaments here. Matter Hackers has a new MH version. I'm using that for the white. The Candy Apple Metal Flake Red from Protopasta, I'm using that for the red. A E-Sun Bronze, which I'm actually using for the gold, and then some Inland Black to finish it off. The first step was to bring in a box element and then drop the ruler in the corner so I could get dimensions. Then I resized this thing to 270 millimeters long and 92 millimeters tall. This gave me similar proportions to his. Then I made it 3 millimeters high. Then I imported his 9 3/4. Why reproduce that? And I just resized it to the proportions that would fit my sign. And then I centered this to my plaque and the 9 3/4, and the sign was looking really good. The next step was to bring in the text tool and spell out Hogwarts Express. Well, it turns out the letters are very similar to the font that he used. And all I had to do was resize that so it fit within my plaque and then center that along with the 9 3/4 in the plaque. And there was the basic building block. Now he had a nice frame around his with a rounded molding and then a flat edge. So what I did is brought in a rounded roof piece and made it 5 millimeters wide, 2.5 millimeters tall, and then just stretched it out to the length of the sign, so 92 millimeters in this case. And then I duplicated that and slid one to the other side, put that on the edge, and then I made another one 90 degrees but the full length, and then duplicated that and put it at the top. So I had my rounded edge. Now I needed my flat edge, so I brought in another box, made it 2.5 millimeters wide and 4 millimeters tall, so it's a little taller than the round but a little bit thinner. And then I duplicated that on all 4 sides, and I had my square frame with my rounded inner edges. And then I grouped all this together minus the 9 3/4, and I had my Hogwarts sign. Now I lowered the 9 3/4 a little bit, 2.5 millimeters, to dig into the top. And then I duplicated and slid that out because I'm going to print that separate. Then I made the original one a hole and grouped that together. And what this did is put an indent in the sign so I know where to glue the 9 3/4. Then I exported both those .stl files, and then I went off to Simplify 3D to slice them. Here's the 9 3/4. I actually made 2 processes, and it's all standard settings, except I made the first layer stop at 1 millimeter. Here, let me show you all. This is what it'll print. It'll show a little bit of 9 3/4. It'll print up to that point, and then process 2 will finish it off. Process 2 will start at 1 millimeter and print from there. So the bottom will be a white, and this top process 2 I'll use a black, so I'll switch material when I print. And so here it is. Here's the first layer, the first process, and then here's the second layer of black being put on top. I have my 9 3/4. Now I did the same thing with the plaque. I had a process 1, I stopped at 5.5 millimeters, and I'll show you that. It prints the whole thing minus that top edge, which is going to be gold. So this will all be printed in red, and then I'll use the advanced setting to set it to start at 5.5, and I'll use single extrusion walls so I get good lettering here, and this will all be gold, and you see it's lifted off the bed. So here's the first process all printed out, and it looks really good. And then I ran the second process. Here's a kind of a brief time lapse of it printing the gold. This is looking really, really good. Now I noticed the 9 3/4 printed with a little bit of lip. I got out my deburring tool, which I have a link to this in the description below if you want to buy one. But it's great for cutting the edges because I don't have to worry about cutting my thumb. So I just carve the edge, make it nice and smooth, and then I used a black marker to make the whole side black. And then I just put a little bit of super glue on the back of this thing, pressed it in place and made sure everything was straight, and then I just let it dry. And once I did that, I was done. Now I actually made 2 of these because my plan was to glue them together and hang it so I had a Hogwarts Express sign that would look good in both directions. But after my wife saw it, she had a little spot on her bench that she wanted to place it, so I hung it and leveled it for her, and there it is. If you like this project, maybe check out some of the other videos that are popping up here. If you want to help support the channel, $1 a month to Patreon. If nothing else, click on that CHEP logo and subscribe. That's it for this week. I'll see you next time right here at Filament Friday.